Thank you so much to everyone for being with us today and for joining this Moodle Academy webinar on maths education with the Moodle Stack question type. My name is Richard Lefroy and I'm part of the Moodle Academy team at Moodle, and today I'm joined by Marcus Green, Senior eLearning Technical Consultant at Catalyst IT in Europe. Today, Marcus will be running us through the Stack question type, which is the most powerful and flexible maths-related question type available for essentially any platform. Of course, with that power comes some complexity and, of course, great responsibility. So this webinar will address how it can be used by non-experts, and we'll see some ways of simplifying the question editing process and also sharing resources. So with that, thank you so much, Marcus, for being with us today, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Richard. I will share my screen. Hello, everybody. My name is Marcus Green. I work for Catalyst EU, and I'm going to start this story, this presentation, with a story of my own experience with maths education. And this starts at Wolverhampton Polytechnic in 1979. And that's a photograph of me. And you can see that, as behind me, that music and playing music has been a passion. So in 1979, I enrolled at Wolverhampton Polytechnic, as we used to call universities if you didn't get the right grades. And I enrolled in a combined science degree. However, shortly after enrolling on that course, I switched to degrees to avoid maths. Now, it was only one quarter of the first half of the year that involved maths. They actually called it quantitative methods, but I quickly appreciated that that's maths. And by the time we rapidly accelerated to calculus, I could see that I wasn't going to pass. Now, this is not in any way to disparage the teaching. I just needed a lot of help. So I switched to a social science degree. 2 years into the social science degree, in order to get onto the third year, you had to do a single module in statistics. I think you know where this is going. I moved to a different university. Great news. In 1982, I graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in social science. Now, this didn't leave me with a dislike for maths. It just left me with a feeling that with the right tools, I could have been more successful. Fast forward again to 2003, the spring, summer of 2003, I discovered Moodle. And I'd been working with my own quiz question software. I became a programmer. But when I saw the way that Moodle did it, I thought, this is redundant. These people do it very, very well. I will adopt Moodle. And it was at the same time I became a teacher. Now, I was a teacher of computing-related subjects, but due to circumstances and illness, I ended up teaching maths, computer-related maths. And I got some really good results, which is a little bit of a surprise as it wasn't my subject area, but this rekindled my interest in it. Also, I became passionate about Moodle and quizzes, and I created 2 question types, which I highly recommend to you, which are the gap fill and the word select question types. So I started to understand what was possible in Moodle quiz questions. And then I discovered the Stack question type, which is specifically aimed at teaching and learning of maths. And if you've ever looked at Moodle quiz questions, and I've looked at every one I possibly can since 2003, you get 14 built into Moodle, and then you have third-party question types. And people are building these. Oh, I'm just going to shut the window because otherwise I'm going to have building noises. People are constantly creating new question types. In fact, one was only released yesterday, quite an interesting one. But Stack, my point here is that Stack is a whole different league of power and flexibility. And in my view, importantly, its ability to give very detailed feedback. So just winding back slightly about this rest of this presentation, this isn't going to be about maths. This is going to be about the Stack question type and education. Maths expertise will not be required. I won't show you anything that you don't understand. I won't demonstrate anything complex, because here at Catalyst, we are learning technologists. Okay, we provide solutions to people, and we recognize that it's the teachers will take these tools and use them in ways that we probably haven't even thought of. So that's my approach today. So as I was saying, Stack is a whole different category of power of question types. And it's that because it's dedicated to maths and it understands maths. Okay. But what I'm going to talk about is not just for math students. Arguably, I'm more interested in any students who have to study some maths as part of their course. Okay, just as like I had to do both on the 2 degrees that I was enrolled in. So they both required maths. My sociology degree required, my social sciences required statistics, and a branch of maths I've become very, very interested in since. Now, as the saying goes, with great power comes some complexity. And the reason that Stack understands maths is that you have to install a second service. It's not like most quiz question types. You have a second service called Maxima. Now, this is a very mature computer algebra system that has its origins in 1982. In fact, it goes back even further. So people were working on its predecessor when I was a student back then. But apart from that, it's a standard Moodle question type that means it can take advantage of all those fantastic things that have been built up over the last 20 years and have been rigorously tested by the 450 million people who've got Moodle accounts around the world. So this is, apart from the fact it uses Maxima, it's a standard Moodle question type. So all that reporting and grading and what have you is there. Also, it is maintained by university professors at some prestigious places here in the UK. So what do I mean by understands, excuse my air quotes, understands? I mean that it can accept math symbols. You can get students to type in things that will do mathematical things like square roots or what have you, or powers. It will also display them through the magic of LaTeX, which is a technology that's been around for a long time. But the thing that I really appreciate is that it will validate the student's response, and I'll explain why that's important. And of course, it can do complex maths because it's got Maxima behind it. It's arbitrarily complex maths, things that no matter how much of a mathematician you are, there will be things that are beyond your ken. So it's a bit much to have a philosophy associated with a question type, but Stack has its own 3-point philosophy. And the one is teachers can write their own questions. And that might feel like, well, what's the point of something? Couldn't write their own questions. And I think that is historically, there have been maths related tools whereby you had to do a bunch of programming before you could do anything. Now you can do some programming with Stack, but you don't have to. Okay. The other point is, and I'm going to return to this, students should not be penalized for computer skills. And by computer skills, I mean their understanding of how the question type works. And the other one, which these days is a little redundant, it says multi-part questions should be possible. And that's so embedded in it that I just take it as a given now. So multi-part questions should be possible. And you'll see this in some of the screens I'm going to show, is that you can have multiple fields where you enter related information and it can manipulate the response or the grade for one field based on what you entered into a different field. It can also do that across multiple questions in a single quiz. So, as I was saying, this is powerful stuff. But I'm going to talk about not penalizing students for what I've said there, the computer skills. And because I was a teacher for 10 years, I completely understand and appreciate that students have a sense of fairness. So if you ask them a question, they know the answer, they key in the correct answer, and it says, you don't get a mark, they get quite rightly upset about it. And this could happen because they type in something that looks right but doesn't make any sense. This validation is optional, and I say, see the Stack philosophy, right? You know, these are the 3 points of its philosophy. So let me give you an example of validation, or making sure that it only accepts something that could be a correct answer. So up here at the top, you can see that the expected answer is x equals brackets 2x plus 1. And you notice there, I'm not closing the parenthesis, brackets parenthesis, okay? And what will happen is, as the student goes to press submit, and it says, your last answer was interpreted as follows, brackets 8. I know it says 834 there. You have a missing right bracket in the expression, okay? So they simply can't submit it unless it's a valid response. And this means that you the system assesses a possibly correct answer rather than seeing it as just some nonsense. And you can also imagine that sometimes a student might key in a spurious letter of the alphabet instead of a mathematical referencing thing, and that will throw up an error there. So to me, it's partly about fairness and getting marking something that a student would want to key in rather than just, well, you typed it in, so it must be correct. So that's making sure that the right data goes in. Now, what is it about it that comes back? So as I was saying, I've been using quiz questions. I created my own quiz engine. Not terribly good, but it was mine. So it's around about 1999. And in terms of, and I've struggled to make sure that my question types can give good feedback. And if you've used Moodle quiz, you'll be aware of correct answer feedback, partially correct, incorrect, and hints and all that kind of stuff. But Stack goes to a whole different level. Nothing is even remotely as powerful as the Stack ability to give what I call intelligent feedback. And I hesitate when I say intelligent feedback because there's a world full of artificial intelligence. In my view, it's a lot, well, I know it's a lot more predictable than anything that happens there. So, and this is available for every input field can have its own detailed feedback. And this is based on a concept. I should change the order of these slides, and you'll see why in a second. That they have a thing they call PRTs, which is potential response trees, and you can have nodes with a different test. You can tailor the marks, and you can tailor the feedback. And the next screen is going to illustrate this much better than that text there. So here we go. Right. I love this. I was looking at this and thinking, this is really good, this. And then I realized that if I show this, people will think that's like a conceptual thing that I've mocked up in a paint program. It's not. That is a screenshot taken from a potential response tree when I was editing a question type. So let me explain what it does. So you can see it's got some numbers backed by purple there, and it says 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay. So this is for a single field, and 1, 2, and 3, or 2 and 3, are the nodes if your response isn't correct. Okay. So he says 1, 2, 3, 4 there. It says, does the value match? Test for lowest terms, test something, something, more analysis. I gave it those names, right? So I've given the names for each test on it. And each test can result in either true or false. So you've gone into number 1, you keyed in an answer and go, that's not correct. So now we start to go down the incorrect response tree. And you can see the red line there. It says equals 0. That means, well, you got it wrong. You don't get any marks. Okay. Then you get to number 2, you still don't get any marks. You could at some point actually give it some marks, but we got the 3 tests down there, and then that will build up, or can build up, the feedback that you get. So you can add to the feedback. So that's what happens if your response is incorrect. Down the other side, where it says 1 equals 1, and then it goes to 4, that means, well, you got it correct. You got 1 mark. Woohoo! And then you get to 4, we've got an additional test here, and then you could have an additional mark on that if you get it further correct, but we're not going to take any off if you get it incorrect. Okay, now you can probably see, that's really powerful. You don't have to do this stuff. You can probably go years without really fully engaging with anything more than the straightforward marking. But my point is this kind of power is available. Okay, and it's not available anywhere else, and you don't have to do computer programming to do this. So that is the concept of the potential response tree. Okay, now I'm going to talk about something that you probably will use. And this is, again, I get so excited about this. Let's say I'm not a mathematician. So wind back to younger Marcus, and I'm teaching, and every week I give my students a 10-question Moodle quiz, right? And at first they go, I've got a quiz. I've got a quiz. Week 1. Week 2, you've got a quiz. I don't do a quiz. Week 3, I've got a quiz. Week 4, I've got a quiz. Because they're low stakes quizzing, and I'm interested in teaching and learning. I know that's a little eccentric for somebody who's a teacher, but there are a lot of teachers who are interested in exams and tests and assessment, but I'm interested in teaching and learning. So it gets to week 5, and I say, my students will say to me, is there a quiz today? And I said, sorry, I haven't got one. I've got no quiz. So they've gone from regarding a quiz as almost a punishment to, that's interesting. And the reality is, people like quizzes. In the English language, the most common use of the word quiz is to have the word pub before it. So this was my experience as a teacher. However, one of the things I noticed was that if you give students a question they've done previously, they're quite resentful. They're like wasting my time. Okay. And in creating new questions, it's quite intellectually demanding. However, with Stack, which I wasn't using at the time, you can have one question that shows different variables for each question attempt. So this is brilliant for learning or for practice. As I say, I was quite interested in arranging for students to learn stuff. It also, for people who are into assessments, high stakes assessments, exams and tests and those things that make people quite anxious, two students sitting next to each other, if the one thinks, I know how to find the answer and leans over to the person next to them, the person next to them, they're going to be statistically, assuming this random number is picked from a big enough sequence of numbers, they're going to be seeing a different question. So they can copy the answer all they like, but it probably won't be correct. You can do very complex maths with this, but I'm not going to show you complex maths as I promised. I'm going to show you something slightly similar. So slightly easier, I should say. Okay. So the random question variables random question values is based on question variables, and you do need to learn a little syntax for this. And the syntax is you have to come up with a variable name, and there's like a standard where you say TA for teacher answer, but you can call it anything. And then instead of an equals, you have a colon. Then you put in whatever value you want in there, and then you put in a semicolon. So you've got two things to learn there. You have to say the colon is for the equals, and the semicolon finishes it. So it's a little bit like programming. And here you can see we've got a variable name and the colon, which is the equivalent of equals, and then we've got a value. And the value here is just 1. So the answer to this question is just 1, which is not very exciting, because what we want to find out about is how can we have random variables coming up. So this is the example I'm about to show you. You can see we've got / ***. That's a comment. That's a programming thing. Not necessary. I just put that in so that it will be a hint to somebody else. And it says random number starting from up to in steps of. So in this case, we want random numbers between 2 and 12 in steps of 1. And here's a third bit of learning here. Rand with step, okay? There are a lot of these kind of functions, but this one, I did a search through the sample questions that ship with Stack, and there's like hundreds of instances of this. I think they should put up the priority list in terms of its documentation, because it's really, really useful. So it says, this number is a random number from 2 to 12 in steps of 1. Timed by is a random number between 2 to 12 in steps of 1, okay? So we got random numbers. And the answer, which really should be TA, that's the standard TA for teacher answer. Not necessarily correct answer, but teacher answer. This number multiplied by timed by. If I had a snare drum, well, I do actually, but I'm not going to play it. If I got a snare drum roll here for the next slide, it's the 12 times table. Okay, so you got one question which you put in a quiz. You could put in multiple examples of it. And every time each student made an attempt, so you've got two students sitting next to each other, they would see a random permutation of these numbers. Okay. And what that means is, for a teacher, and we're really interested in trying to make teachers' lives easier. And I'm going to come back to that later on about making Stack easier to use. So you've got one question, rather than having to come up with, 144 different permutations of a multiple choice question. You have one question, and the computer effectively generates the answers, because the cognitive load on teachers is creating new question types that are correct and engaging and are not boring, sort of you just give them the same one again. So that's that may be the peak of complexity of maths I'm going to show today, although I may touch on some percentages. So that's random question variables. Okay. Going back to everybody's school days, learning maths, whatever age, I think everybody at some point has been told, a teacher will lean over your shoulder and you just put in the answer, and they'll say, well, that may be the correct answer, but you need to show your working. Okay, you need to show your working so that I know how you got there. And Stack addresses this through a thing called reasoning by equivalence. Personally, I'd like to rename it. Maybe I could rename the string and call it show your working. We've all been there. And what you can do with this is you can set it up many, many different ways, but you can set it up so the student gives a mark for the right answer, but an additional mark if they show they're working out or the steps they took in order to get there. And of course, like everything else, this could be based on random numbers. So I'm going to give you an illustration of how this could work. Okay. The maths problem is solve the following equation. 5x equals 30 plus 2x. And the correct answer is x equals 10. But it says here, it's got some instructions that say, show each step of your working. And this student hasn't shown the steps of their working. And the feedback has said, your answer is partially correct. Arguably, it's entirely correct, but bear with me. You've been automatically given 1 mark for a correct response, but an additional mark was available if you had shown your working out. Marks for this submission, 1 out of 2. Okay. Now, you can tweak the kind of feedback that you get to your heart's content. You can also actually get the feedback so it fits in with the display there, just underneath the check button. And note with a check button there that because Stack is a standard Moodle question type, you can use all the available question behaviors. So the one that I've been using mostly for this is, I can't remember, it's the one where you can have as many attempts as you like, and it doesn't deduct any marks. It's purely for practice. You could have it so that you just get 1 attempt at it, and then you submit it all, and then you get feedback, or you don't get any feedback at all. All the fabulous complexity and power of the Moodle quiz question behavior is available to Stack. Oh, this is, I added this slide first thing this morning here. It's before 8 o'clock this morning when I remember this, because this is such a nice feature that is not emphasized by the documentation. And you can see here, this is differentiation. I just borrowed this from somewhere else. What you can also do, you can have an ungraded free text field. Okay, so you can imagine you're a teacher and you're looking at your students' work, and you see a student who's got unexpectedly low marks, and they're really smart cookie, and you don't know why they didn't do this. And if you put in a little box here that it is not graded, it says explain your reasoning. This will not be graded, it is only for the teacher. And the student types in, they might type in something like, I have no idea, or this is my logic. So you can actually capture some feedback from the student on what their thinking was. And that's not graded, but it's useful because you can hand mark questions. Right, I'm going to pause here and ask for questions, because I'm now going to move on to graphical questions, which are slightly different things. So if I'm going to fire up the chat here and see if anybody's got any questions. So has anybody got any questions?
Yes, there have been a couple of questions in there. Some of them have been sort of answered or responded to. I don't know, Marcus, do you want me to pick out a few, or do you want to have a little scan through?
Well, I'm just trying to scroll back up there, and I've just seen somebody asking about adaptive, and I think that, yes, I think that is what it's called. There's 2 sorts of adaptive, and I'm just clicking the got it so I can see all of the questions. Oh, yes. I'm just scrolling all the way back here. You'll have to pause while I have a look. Hello from India. Lovely. Okay. Yeah.
Marcus, there's a question about the library of questions available that used to be the Helms standalone courses, but they're now in the library. Do you want to explain that, or is that coming in the later?
I'm gonna cover the sample questions available, and I'm also going to touch on, and now is a good time to mention it, that literally yesterday evening I received an email, and I knew it was coming, that a new version of Stack has been released that includes new samples in the new feature, which is Question Library. Looks to me like I've misspelt input somewhere there. Let's have a look. No, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, a landlord wouldn't get a lot of clients if they said they were putting on a pub exam rather than quiz. Right. Yeah. Now somebody's mentioned about the use of AI systems, which I'm also going to touch on there. Right.
just got a hand up from Roger. Roger, did you want to jump in, or did you have a question in the...
Yes. I really wanted to ask about, let me take in a case that we have a class of different levels of students. Actually, I'm not a teacher, but I do the authoring in Kenya. We are developing a text. So my question is, suppose in a case we have discussed earlier there where you are required to request an input to show the working for the student. So you have three kinds of students in a class who wants to give an input. You have the smartest one who doesn't know how to really do the working, but he can go straight to the answer by just working simple. And we have a student who can give each step by step by giving maybe, for example, you had 5x equals to 2x plus 30. So you want to say take x 2x to the other side of equal sign. He or she wants to explain it. And we have another one, the one you have said he has no clue of whatever is happening. So how are you going to capture that in a case that you want to reward a mark for that working?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to say as well, I hope you got that too. But yeah, look, Roger, I think your audio is a little soft, and I had a little bit of trouble hearing that, and I think Marcus did.
Do you want to type it into the text chat, Roger, so that I can see it there?
I was just going to suggest the same thing. Yeah, Roger, if you could do that, that would be super handy.
So what I will do is...
I believe, sorry to interrupt, Richard and Marcus, but I believe Roger was asking, how do you capture three different kinds of students? For example, one who knows the answer and goes straight to it, one who does a little bit of work, and then one who has to work through the answer all the way.
Yeah. I don't know, in the sense that it depends on the range of complexity, the students, and the type of question. So, for example, if you use the equivalence by reasoning and they enter multiple lines to explain, you would set it up so you get additional marks for including your working out, but you've also got the facility to go back and hand grade. And for that reason, this is where the notes can be particularly useful, because ideally, if a student feels comfortable and confident, they will type into there. And I ran the kind of classroom where I really would have encouraged them to tell me exactly what they thought of the question type. And that way you can work out what's going on, what's going on in their heads. But there's no simple answer to that, to capture the different levels of understanding. It's just, all right. But come back to me, type that in, Roger, because I may have misinterpreted what you were saying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on now with the JSX graph library. And the two things that have come up interestingly here are the use of AI with this, which is a complete passion of mine. If I was independently wealthy, I'd be doing nothing but Moodle AI, okay, for teaching and learning, and Moodle AI, because that's my passion. But what I'm going to touch on now, which also includes the suggestions about the use of AI, is graphical questions, because remember that my passion is about maths, but in the broader use of maths outside the maths department. So I'm now going to talk about a thing called the JSX Graph Library, which is, there are two ways of doing graphics. There's another thing called Geogra, but the thing I like about JSX Graph is it's entirely free and GPL. And I want to emphasize that everything we've been showing you today here is freely available under the GNU public license, which means you can download all of this stuff and do it yourself. We here at Catalyst EU, we do a hosting service, so people can pay us to look after the complexity, but you can all do this yourself as well. Okay, so let me go back to, so if you can confirm, I'm just going to shut down the chatter here. So as my screen displaying, because you can see JSX graph. Excellent, right. Now I've got a little animation here for a question, and the question is, one side of a parallelogram is drawn on this centimeter grid. The parallelogram does not have any right angles. Complete the parallelogram by dragging the dot so it has an area of 24 square centimeters. So let me show you how this works. So we've got some dots. It's got to be a closed shape. So I'm dragging that to there, and then we're going to have it's going to be like 6 by 6 eighths. Right, okay, great. That's got the right area. Tremendous. Wait, it says it's got an incorrect answer, and it's got an incorrect answer because the question said no right angles. Okay, so now I go, well, I'll try it as a parallelogram, and I check that, and you can see. Correct. Now, I'm not going to show you the code, but there's a bunch of code behind that. It's the Maxima programming language, right? Which I don't really know. I genuinely really don't know it. But there's a marvelous service called ChatGPT. You may have heard of it. There's another one called Grok, spelt with a Q. There's another thing on my computer downstairs called Olama. They call it AI. I call it large language models. And I gave it a sequence of prompts and some testing and some prompts and some testing and some prompts. And it came up with a code. That may make me a bad person because I'm using code I don't fully understand. But it allowed me to create this. And when I first did this, it would have taken me, I'd probably spent a day and a half or longer to get it to do this. But since then, some of the other things I'm going to show you, I've done this in the last few days. And that's one is a pie graph. That was, you drag a line and a pie goes like that and it tests it. And it had cut down, the time was measured in a relatively small number of hours through the use of large language models. And because I'm a plugin developer, I'm having fantasies about embedding links to AI and all of that. And people have mentioned this to augment it. You still would rely on the stack math stuff for for all the magic. And in my view, the AI things aren't my number one choice of grading stuff because they can hallucinate. But for coming up with code to create these beautiful questions, they're excellent. Here we go. So that's an example. This is me doing the screenshots just in case the video didn't work this morning. Okay. Detailed feedback. So that was the detailed feedback. So here's another one, and this is really showing the same thing again, but I will show it anyway. So this is about percentages. Okay. You've been asked to record the following sales figures on a graph. You can imagine this for the business department. In January, 10 items were sold. In February, there was a 50% increase in the sales of January. Now, 50% of 10 must be 5, so it must be 15. In March, the sales were 100% up on February. So in February, we got 15. 100% of 15 is 30. But wait, no. We got an incorrect response there. It says the correct answer is 30, but you entered 25. Note it's intelligent in the sense that it knew you entered 25 and it gave you feedback. Okay. And these values can be dependent on each other. So in other words, if you got February incorrect, but March was actually 100% of February, it can comment on that. So not only have you got multiple parts to the question, but you've got multiple parts that can be dependent on each other. Okay, so that's an example of a line graph, and somewhere I've got a bar chart as well, but I think you get the picture. Okay, I think it's maybe my screenshots again. Yeah. Okay. Now, one of the issues that came up when I was exchanging messages with Richard about this presentation was about accessibility. And dragging points, even though it shows a shadow of the value, you could set this up so you could just type in the values. And I'm showing you this to show slightly behind the curtain there that what's really happening is when you drag those points, it's adjusting those values. And if this was animated, I'd be dragging one of those points and those numbers would change. And what you're doing here, you're binding the fields to those input points. Okay. So, but going back to this thing, this is JSX Graph. And when I first started intensively doing JSX Graph about a year ago, I'm a programmer. I've been a programmer since the late 80s. So I've got a huge advantage. It's JavaScript. I've done a lot of JavaScript. It was a challenge. It was a challenge. And I looked at other people's code and I created stuff and it was good. But this is just around about the time when AI systems like ChatGPT were coming to the fore. So I started to ask ChatGPT, and it was quite useful. And then I started to learn my prompt engineering, and it became a little more useful. And within the last few weeks, Google Gemini seems to be even better at this kind of stuff. Now, it does require an iteration and some understanding, and it doesn't give you what you want immediately. But I think that for me, it means coming up with a solution is somewhere between 5 and 10 times quicker. You know, tasks that would have taken a day and a half, maybe 2 days, if all goes well, you're done by lunchtime. Inevitably, with this kind of tool, you may not end up with the slickest, most perfect code that an expert spending 3 to 4 days would take, but it's really, really good. And we're offering we here at Catalyst, we offer consultancy on this, but I'm telling a little secret that we will use AI for this, and we can create, basically, if you can imagine it, we can create it using JSX Graph. And again, the JSX Graph, it's GPL stuff. You can go away and play with this, and there's lots of examples. Okay, so the thing about a powerful tool like Stack is, and Moodle itself, in my view, it can sometimes feel like you're a little kid at Christmas and you've been given this Meccano set, and it's got Tower Bridge or a luxury liner on it. You go, oh my, fantastic! I'm going to build it, and then you realise, oh, can't some of these bits be sort of kind of a few more hints? Now, the young people today, they've got YouTube. I play guitar. I bought the textbooks and the chords were wrong. But people these days, they expect a little more help. Stack comes with that help, which people have been asking about. So this is a course that comes bundled in with the Stack question type in the form of an MBZ backup, right? And I didn't know about this. I've been working it for quite a long time. And the things that the people who develop Stack, they're professors of maths. They've got PhDs in maths, and they're brilliant. But they're focused on the maths and the Stack question type. And if you're a novice for this, sometimes you have to hunt around for things. They've actually made a very strategic decision to focus more on ease of use and samples rather than new features recently, which is brilliant. And the new version that came in last night, I knew it was coming, and I looked in there and I was like, yes, that helps. Just a little tweak there. So you can see that I've got it scrolling up there. These are the sorts of this is the content that comes with it. It comes with it. It's an MBZ. You restore it as you would anything else, and you've got a whole world of. It's called Helm. It's called Helping Engineers Learn Maths, I think it is, and it's under active development. It comes with another course called, I think it's called Introduction to Stack. So you've got a lot of help. You know that thing sometimes you get a new plugin, you go, I don't know what to do with it. Well, if you know where to look, there's a lot of help. Okay. Now, this is a feature, exchanging messages with a maintainer of Stack last night. And I said, what's the number one feature that I should emphasize today? And he said, well, it's not a new feature for the version that came out yesterday, but it is a standout feature for the versions that have been released in the last year. And they call it the question library. And I think this would be a great feature to have in some of the other complex question types, such as close, because as you can see here, this is the question editing interface. And I've clicked on a link that says question library. Okay. And when I do that, you can see this category, a network of categories. And you click on and open them. And if I were to pause that, you'd see there's a category there. It's called Catalyst, because in our branch of it, we've created our own category of template questions with an emphasis on Stack, actually. And then I've clicked on this here, and you'll see it's previewed in the right-hand side. That's the source at the top. You can see that's like a rendering of it. Then I'm clicking import, and that becomes a shiny, fresh new question. And I was tempted to say there, this is great for novices with Stack. It's just for anybody who's using Stack, because something like Stack comes with a bunch of settings. So why you don't want to go click around, click a new one. What you really want is a template to bring in the stuff that you're going to use. And then it's your instance of the question and you get on with editing. You see here calculus, algebra, matrices, complex numbers, Catalyst. You see Catalyst there, that's own category. And you can see it's rendering the maths there, clicking import, and so it comes in. So this is a real headline feature. And in fact, the new version, Chris, the maintainer, so I think there's some additional stuff in the new version, but I was busily creating this presentation, so I haven't actually had a look at that. So that is and I'm really tempted to add this feature to my own gap fill question type because I'm on a mission of, well, the reason I got into creating Moodle questions was because of the closed question type was too complex for me. It's very, very powerful, but if the power comes at the price of complexity that you don't understand it, it's meaningless. So that was why I built the question type, which I delivered in 2011, and it's now installed in the millions of people using it. And so our mission is to make Stack more usable. And so fortunately, that's also the mission of the people behind it. So that's core Stack. Okay. Now what I'm about to show you is something we've been experimenting with. This isn't production code. It absolutely works. And we'd really like people to experiment and give us feedback. As I was saying, we're focused on getting people to use the thing because we feel that once you've got some benefit from this and you've seen the potential long-term usage, you're going to love it. But you've got to get to that stage where you love it. And I've spoken to many people over many years. They say, well, I'd like to use it, but I tried it and it's too complex. Okay. So this is one of the things that this plugin, I call it Stack UI for user interface. And as you can see, the arrow at the top there says, some elements are hidden for simplification based on you being in cohort Stack Novice. And a cohort is a site-wide group. You don't have to use this feature. You can make it for everybody. And the idea is that this isn't my imagination. You got some teachers who haven't used Stack before. You want them to learn it. You put them in this cohort, and then they get this feature. The other thing you can see here is an arrow. It says show all, right? And what this does is by default, it hides some of the fields that are rarely used, okay? It also does some other subtle stuff to the interface as well. You can see here we've got two red arrows pointing to a little editor which says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the gutter there. By default, normally you don't have any line numbers. And when Stack throws an error because you've got something wrong in your Stack Maxima, it will refer to the line number, but you just got to count down the lines. So this plugin will actually give you line numbers it's like a subtle improvement in usability. There's another feature as well in here that is about subtle user is that in the question text area, it will set it to a monospaced font, which apparently is useful in certain circumstances. I was going through the issues when people are asking for this. So this is the Stack UI plugin. And by the way, this is all configurable. You can decide which fields are displayed and which fields are not displayed. And my last thing about this is that at the bottom of every Stack editing field, there is a thing here that says fix dollars, insert your own humor there. And this is something to do with the latex mass rendering thing. And what it will do is it will replace your $, with backslash. I was like, hello, do I need to do this? And if you've got this thing turned on, it just hides that. You can get it back if you want, but it just hides it. I haven't needed that so far, and I think a lot of other people won't need it anyway. So that's the Stack UI plugin, which you can see on GitHub. You can download, you can play with it. And also the Catalyst example questions as well are publicly visible. You can play with it. And what we're hoping is that people will share their examples, and by sharing it and covering lots of areas of maths and uses of Stack, it will make it more popular. So I'll just summarize the thing that I've said today is that Stack, not just for the maths department. For me personally, Stack, especially for the study of maths outside the maths department. And part of the reasoning behind that is that I was the example going back to 1979. When you're running a university, every student represents some revenue, and every student that leaves represents some revenue lost. And if you add up the amount of money you get per head, if they drop out of the course because they didn't pass the maths module, then you need to make the money somewhere else or cut something. And so my concept is that this will help retention. It will help and student confidence because they can sit and practice with these things. And the thing about practicing with quizzes is that students much prefer to be wrong in front of a computer than a person. The one of my intense annoyances 15 years later as I heard teachers disparage students to their faces about their abilities when I'm a big fan of encouraging students, not disparaging them. And the other thing about Stack is that it understands maths. As I've emphasized there, it's got this massive multi-decade development called Maxima in there. So it understands maths. but that does require a separate service, and that does add some complexity, which is why we offer the hosting. The other thing, and I think I added this at the very last moment last night as illustration, is that it's one thing to go with some fabulous, powerful some teaching and learning tool, but you want to be confident that you're not going to be orphaned. So Stack is under very active development. A new version came out, I say literally last night, which I haven't played with. I'm signed up to go to the conference in Durham in a few weeks' time. It is used globally very widely, and that means there's lots of other people working on it. You can be confident that it's going to be around. Stack itself has been around from the dawn of Moodle time. I only discovered it in the mid-teens, but it's been around since the early zeros, as long as Moodle has been. So it's a well-supported tool. Okay, Finn, the end. I've been Marcus Green. That's me on the left a year or so ago, and that's me on the right a long time ago when I was being made very anxious by not being able to understand calculus on my combined science degree. But it turned out all right in the end. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to ask for feedback and questions. And if necessary, I can show you some, I can actually, fire up an instance of Stack to show you the question editing interface and that sort of stuff. Questions, please.
I'll just very, very quickly jump in. Marcus, thank you so much for all of that. We've got quite a lot of people in here, and there's been quite a lot of activity in the chat, which is fantastic, but it also means it's a little bit hard to keep track of. What I might ask is if anyone has put a question into the chat that they don't feel has been addressed yet, maybe if you could just copy and paste it again, just so that we know that you still want to ask that question, because it's getting a little tricky to go and navigate back through everything that's been going on. But Marcus, thank you so much for all of that. One thing I love is hearing people who are just really enthusiastic about things, talking about their things. And I am completely illiterate when it comes to advanced maths. So it's been a pleasure to come and have you in and so enthusiastically share all of this. So thank you to you. And yes, anyone else, please feel free to drop your questions back into the chat if you have any more. We do still have, by my clock, about 8 minutes. Although saying that as well, usually people are happy to hang on for an extra couple of minutes if we go over time. Just a very quick thank you as well to Mark Glynn, who's been helping. Well, I was going to say helping. Who's been running the chat and helping reply there. Now we have a question, a hand up from Chris. Chris, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, folks. Thanks, Marcus, for giving such a good account of the plugin. I wrote the plugin and I maintain it, and it's very. It's great to see other people enthusiastic about it and using it. If I may, there are just a couple of things that would be really... do you mind me saying a couple of things, Marcus and Richard? No, thank you.
I'm not worthy. Go on.
Well, the first thing is there are quite a few features that would be really interesting to non-mathematicians, but where having the maths in the background is really useful. And the first one is just dealing with strings and text-based input. So because we've got a computer algebra system in the background, it turns out to be very straightforward to program the spell check algorithm, right? So that if you use the stack, of course, I weep at this because I wanted mathematical expressions, but if you type in strings, Stack can decide whether they're close enough to the correctly spelt version automatically. You kind of get that for free. So if you're frustrated with string match, then you can use Stack for very sophisticated string match, and that's all in there. That is documented. I didn't realize this. Some colleagues from Germany contributed that in 2022. So if you want to look at that, how that works, and we've got example questions. And then another thing is that we modified that recently to support drag and drop questions. Can I share my screen for a moment?
Please. Yeah.
I'll need permission, Richard. So drag and drop questions are useful in every subject. Now, I know Moodle has its own drag and drop question type, but again, the advantage of having the computer algebra system is that, right, I'll just share my screen. So here is a stacked version of the drag and drop question. And right, it doesn't matter what this is. This, of course, is a mathematical question, and I filled in the correct answer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to deliberately get 2 of the steps in the wrong order and check it. Because we've got that mathematical algorithm. Oh, I got the wrong. I didn't mean to do that. Okay. I know what. Okay, this is right. Well, firstly, there are multiple correct answers here, and I've got one wrong now. But because we've got this algorithm, it can automatically generate feedback which tells you which 2 steps to swap, right? So this feedback is saying if you swap those 2 steps, it will be correct. Now, whether or not you want to show that feedback to your students, that depends on the way you set up your quiz. We obviously wouldn't do that in an exam, but you get that for free, and that's actually using the same algorithm that decides if 2 strings are spelled incorrectly, right? I mean, because we've got the computer mathematics behind it, we can repurpose those algorithms. So the string matching and the drag and drop, I think, will be just useful for a whole range of other subjects, which would probably be good enough reason to install Stack anyway. And then the last thing is there've been a lot. Thank you to Moodle. The first version of Stack was a standalone quiz system, which I wrote in 2002. And then we very quickly realized that was crazy, and we went in with Moodle as the VLE. And I'm very glad we did that. It was a very good decision, and I'm very grateful to the rest of the Moodle community for doing things like multilingual support and database security and all these other things, right? I want to teach maths, and there are some things can't do. But there have been a few times in the Stack project where Stack has pushed ahead with Moodle, and I'm very grateful to Tim Hunt for his patience with all of this. The downloading the Moodle XML was something that we did, and I think this, the way we've done a library, that's now so the downloading the Moodle XML is now a feature in the standard quiz, right? It shouldn't be a question type thing, and the Stack question library shouldn't really be a Stack thing. It should be, it should work on all the question types. So I hope we'll be able to contribute more stuff back to Moodle core that doesn't involve in Stack. And the last thing is an entirely separate project which we're running at the University of Edinburgh called GitSync. And let me just get up the GitHub page for that. So the idea of GitSync, Stack is complicated, and we have large question banks. Really, I enjoy writing. I enjoy writing all these features, and it's nice to have more exciting things. But if people aren't using it, there's very little point. And the thing that's really causing the biggest problems is organizing questions, sharing questions, helping people adapt existing questions and find the questions and all this kind of thing. And so what we've done in Edinburgh over the last couple of years is an entirely new project, which is nothing to do with Stack. It's another plugin. And what it allows you to do is to take your Moodle question bank and synchronize it with a Git repository on your local machine. Right? So Marcus and I are collaborating on some mathematical questions or on some course. He takes some of my questions and puts them in his course. He improves them, he sends them back, and we can share that using Git. Right? And that's these question banks that we've just seen in Marcus demonstrating the Stack question library are exported using that GitSync thing from a golden copy that we keep, so that we can maintain those questions. Now, maintaining questions over 20 years just takes a lot of careful organization. And it's you suddenly realize how much valuable work librarians do in the world, right? I mean, they really do contribute a huge amount to the academic endeavor. And that's the problem we have to address now. Not the sophistication of the features, but just finding them and using them and sharing them. So that's where the project's going.
Chris, thank you so much for being here and for jumping in with that as well. Marcus.
Yes. I just want to emphasize that Chris is the lead. He's the original creator of it. He's the lead maintainer of it. He's authored book. He's a professor of maths at Edinburgh University. He is. I'm just a very interested fan.
So I think what you're saying, Marcus, is that we have royalty amongst us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Will you be in Durham, Chris?
Well, yeah, so we do have a big international user group for Stack. So we have our own conferences and meetings dedicated to the plugin. So it really is. I mean, I think there are about 2,000 registered Moodle sites with the plugin now. So this really is quite a popular thing. And some big national projects. There's one project that has 1 million users, students in schools. So there's some really big things going on. People have talked about AI. We're certainly using AI to translate questions between different languages. There's all sorts of really exciting things going on, and none of that would have been possible without Moodle. The Moodle's multilingual support and all this stuff meant Stack was available to a much wider range of people than if I'd made this a commercial product. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Now, I've just been keeping an eye on the chat. Marcus, I notice you've been answering a lot in there. Is there anything in the chat that you've already answered that maybe you want to just repeat for anyone who might have missed it, or for the sake of the recording?
Well, one of the questions is a really good question. I try to emphasize is that everything I've shown today is available under the GPL GNU public license, which means you can download, reuse it under the freedoms of that license, change it, give it to your friends, and if you can persuade them, you can even sell it to your friends. But within the limits of that license, they have the right to do what they want to do with it. Here at Catalyst, we offer consultancy and hosting, but that's because we're experts. But you can take this away and you can use it to your heart's content under the standard GPL license. Yeah, DCU, there's a comment there from Rob that they're using it extensively at Dublin City University. Somebody's asked, have you seen a student who can take notes in text math notation? Well, Viswanatha, my ability with LaTeX is very close to zero, but that hasn't inhibited me from creating the things that you've seen so far. And I always use additional tools when I need to do any of that LaTeX magic.
All right. I think we are now just ticked over the hour. I mean, we could probably stay here for another hour carrying on. We might just start wrapping up though. Once again, thank you so much, Marcus, for being here, Chris, for jumping in and for being here. Thank you to Mark as well. I'm just going to take another 90 seconds to just very, very quickly wrap up and just tell you a little bit more about Moodle Academy, and then we will send you on your way to enjoy the rest of your day. So once again, thank you for being here. If you have enjoyed the session, we would really love you to consider getting involved further and helping us grow by contributing to the development of Moodle Academy. You can do this by visiting our Get Involved course, which you'll find on the front page of the Moodle Academy site. You can suggest ideas for new webinars and courses, and you can vote on ideas that have been suggested by others already. We're always on the lookout for community members to help present webinars, as we have seen right now, and also co-create short online courses. And we would love your help making Moodle Academy more inclusive. So if you are able to, please go to our Translate Moodle Academy course, and you can get started with helping us translate our courses and our webinars into other languages. Of course, if you could please help spread the word about Moodle Academy, tell your colleagues about the courses we offer and the webinars that we run. When you do complete a course, you'll earn a badge to add to your little collection. Educators might like to think about getting involved with the Moodle Educator qualification, previously known as the Moodle Educator certification, and also the Moodle Administrator qualification, which is newly launched. Please keep an eye out for future webinars, future courses. Again, thanks to everyone for being involved. It's been great to have you here. And we hope to see you again in the future in more of our webinars and courses. So we will leave it there. Thank you so much.